Hello, this is John Kranz with Ingentis. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. This enabler session is going to focus on a demonstration on measuring diversity and how to help you achieve your D&I goals in the workplace. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to focus on the 5 dimensions of diversity that we want to focus on. So again, this is the concept here is we want to arm our leaders and HR managers with some self-service capabilities around data that you have readily available about your workforce. That's going to then help you manage and drive your D&I goals throughout the organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about the data, how we take that data, and how we allow that data to be formatted in a way that managers and HR leaders are going to be able to benefit from it. It's going to provide them with some insights through the goal setting to help them attain their D&I goals. And that will be part of that use case demonstration we're going to go through as well. So for purposes of the data that we want to give to the HR leaders and managers, we're going to talk about those 5 dimensions of diversity that, in the case of the United States, that are required for compliance reasons. So we're going to look at data around people of color, gender, age, which is 40 or over for United States, persons with disability, and veteran status. So let's just spend a moment just to talk a little bit more about those data types and how we're going to make those available for use. So first, however, I do want to mention that the whole concept here when we talk about arming the HR business leaders and managers is, in order to arm you, you need to have certain data available, presented in a certain way that's going to help you make informed business decisions. So the types of things we want to answer is, how diverse is your workforce to begin with in terms of those 5 dimensions or quadrants we just spoke about? What are the industry benchmarks you're going to be relying on? So if you're going to do goal setting, you don't want to do it in a vacuum. You're going to be really, where it's going to be most beneficial to the organization is for those leaders and to understand what are we going to be setting as goals? How do we go about our goal setting? Also, as a leader, that's going to help you be more productive is, where do you have departments that are lagging when it comes to D&I goals? So that's an example where the data can help you be much more productive as an organization, which will also help you enact change as well. And again, you need the detailed breakout. So what's the ethnicity breakdown for persons of color for each group? What can we do to foster gender equality in terms of male, female, as an example, in the workforce. And that's usually where you're also looking at total comp situations or job grade levels and looking at numbers there as well to make sure there's no great disparity in that respect. And again, it's all based on this data that's going to be made available. And it's all about driving measurable results. So we want to make sure for the leaders, HR, that you're able to help drive results for your organization. You're going to be more productive by having this data available to make these informed decisions and help reach those goals. So let's talk about the data we're going to start using. So we're going to introduce the concept of using indice scores for your D&I. So instead of just looking at the makeup of your organization in terms of diversity, we also need to really put it in the context of what are our goals or benchmarks we're going to be using. So we're going to be using indices to drive overall scores or measurements when it comes to D&I. So one benchmark that can be used, which is very easy to use, is census data that's available from the federal government. So you can pull census data, which can also be by industry. So if you're in a certain sector industry, you can also work that way. There's also data available at the individual county level. So working, if an organization or HR leaders are working with a company that's really headquartered and most employees are out of one general area, you can pull the census data for that county or region as well. And then also we have people of color. So we break that down by each group as well. Again, just following in terms of compliance, it's very important to have the right data available. So we provide these details as well to support companies' initiatives. So that's very important to have. Veteran status, absolutely. There's 4 categories of veteran status, for example, in the United States. And what we've done, we've just grouped them for simplicity purposes in the demo. We put them into one broad category, but you can break them out as well. But again, we need to have all this data available. So let's talk about how to use this data. So how it's going to be beneficial to you. So we're going to we're going to create an index score. So the index score approach is first look at, in the case we're looking at persons of color as one of our measurements. We're going to look at the total number of employees and how many out of that total number are persons of color. We have 53%, but I don't know if that's a good or bad number. So the data really needs to work for you to tell a story story. And right now, the data is not telling a story. We need to understand, is this a good number we're talking about, or is it a lagging number? So in this case, let's say we're out of a specific location for a county. We're centrally located. So here what we're going to do is we're going to take our percentage of employees at company, which is 53%. And instead of using the U.S. general demographic benchmark, we're going to go with the county, which was 49% in our case. So by dividing 53, our percentage, by the 49, that gives us an index score. And you want to be at 100 or above to meet or surpass that index score. So this is how you can use data and come up with a plan to really provide additional information to HR leaders and managers. So instead of just having the composition and counts around diversity for the workforce, now you've got it in context in terms of how are you doing. It could be goal setting, so it doesn't have to be an industry benchmark. It could also be based on individual goals you're setting for various departments as well. So all that is now possible with how we're handling this data for the managers. So here's an example. So we're using benchmark data, which is the upper box. So for persons of color, ethnicity, we're going with the U.S. average of 40%. And then you can see across the board for gender, age, disability, veteran status, persons with special disabilities, we go through and we give you what those nationwide numbers are. So those could be our goals for most of our departments. And what happens is once we have these benchmarks, which is the top box, then we can drive the index scores for this bottom box, which is showing the Department of Corporate Services, for example. And in this department, there's an overall index score, which we just took a straight average, no weighted average, just a straight scale of all 5 measurements combined. And it gave us an overall score over 100, which is good. But notice I also have details for each of those 5 swim lanes for HR leaders, again, the leadership. You're going to know for each of these 5 areas, because again, D&I is a broad-based discussion area. You want to basically see how you're doing in each area. So we break down the index score by each particular area of D&I. So another thing to point out when we go to the demo is, why use org charting for D&I? Well, it's going to help you work with that data that we have. It's also helping you work with this index scoring or benchmarking we talked about that gives us context and goal setting around our D&I. So that's going to enable us to make more informed decisions and be much more productive in terms of supporting our D&I efforts. So let's go through a quick D&I demonstration. So I'm going to pull up here an org chart and let's just focus in on it. So what we're seeing here is an organizational structure starting from the very top level to the second tier and then the third layer underneath. And we're seeing the various overall scores for each department. That's the big number that we see. And then when you do a mouse hover over each department for the overall score, we break it down into those 5 areas. And when we have areas that we scored underneath 100, we have that red typeface. So we're trying to help the leaders be very productive in using this data. So the good news is we have context now around the data. We're using that index score or for goal setting. So now we know we can be much more productive because we can focus on those areas where we're trailing, where we see the red. And those that are green means that we're satisfying those numbers. So this allows us to understand the breakdown of these 5 areas. And I can also further break it down. So if I go to corporate services and I click on ethnicity, we're breaking that down individually by each group that gets categorized. So again, we can see the numbers that are driving this overall score of 83 for persons of color. It's also off in the sidebar. So if I click here, we see here in the sidebar for corporate services, we have an overall score, which is those 5 averages combined, but then we have those 5 different pillars that we're looking at for diversity. So again, this is helping us be much more productive. We're able to focus on a particular department. We're able to understand for each segment of each type for the D&I, we can get a quick analysis of how we're doing against, say, any benchmarks or goal setting that we've done. And again, to be also more productive, we want to be able to achieve goals of improving D&I in the workplace. So to do that, we can present something along the lines of a dashboard view. What this dashboard does, quite simply, is looks at those 5 quadrants of diversity, which is persons of color, gender, age, etc. And it shows you those 3 trailing departments in the organization that need the most attention in order to improve. So again, taking our human capital data and again, giving us this data in a format that not only that we can understand, that has context, but that's helping draw attention to where we need to improve diversity in the workforce. So what I'm seeing here for all these 5 areas is I'm seeing those 3 departments that are trailing, that are struggling the most with the D&I goals that we've set up. So that's going to help me again as I work through my organization. Again, we're not using just a composite number of just normal counts. While that's nice to have, we really want to have context. We really want to arm leaders with context around the data and to do goal setting with the data. And that's where the goal setting comes in, where we say we want to hit that 100% index score or higher. So again, just to summarize what we've shown here around D&I is we're really looking to help arm the organizations to be able to take this human capital data, present it in a certain way that it has some context around it, so we can see how we're performing against benchmarks or goal setting. I want to also draw your attention. We have a white paper around D&I that you can download from our virtual booth. You can contact me also by email. But I hope this gives you an idea of steps that can be taken with an automated tool, taking the data you have in your system of record, which isn't that much data, to be honest. It's not that much data, but the effort we're putting in around the benchmarking of the data and the goal setting, that is the key. That is the key step that is going to drive productivity and drive results around D&I using these index scores. And again, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for watching.